Well, good evening. We've come together with the Speaker of the City Council, Christine Quinn, and other members of the City Council to outline the agreement we've reached on the city's budget for fiscal year 2014, which, as you all know, will begin on July 1st. Getting to yes on a spending plan of some $70 billion for the services provided by scores of city agencies is never simple, but it is a process that has always been made easier by the skillful leadership of Speaker Quinn and the Council Finance Committee Chair Dominic Recchia. This will be the final budget adopted during our administration, and over the past 11.5 years, as you know, we've often faced the challenges of navigating our city through treacherous fiscal waters. When we assumed office, New York was still reeling from all of the effects of 9/11, and even as we guided the city's recovery, we also succeeded in restoring order to its finances, and that in turn helped pull our economy out of the steep nosedive that the terrorist attacks had plunged us into. More recently, we also had to steer New York City through the financial storms that broke during the worldwide recession that began in 2008. And even as cities and states across the nation experienced large-scale layoffs and service cutbacks, our city's commitment to sound fiscal management and pro-growth economic strategies pulled New York out of the recession faster than virtually any other place in this nation, while preserving and even enhancing our quality of life. And even as we weathered two of the worst economic downturns in modern history, the city's bond rating continued to climb to the best levels ever. That's solid evidence of the market's faith in New York City's future, and I think it demonstrates the effectiveness of the partnership we've maintained with Speaker Quinn, Councilman Recchia, and the other members of the city's legislative branch in developing city budgets, and even under the most difficult of circumstances. And I think it's also a fitting tribute to the remarkable achievements of City Budget Director Mark Page and his team at the Office of Management Budget. The Office of Management helping guide the city's finances over the past 11 often turbulent years. Mark, you say nobody ever likes you. Well, some people do. Let me also take the opportunity to say this is the 12th time we've done this, and I also want to mention that Bruce Corey, one of our speechwriters, has written remarks for every single budget over the last 11.5 years. And once again this year, we've produced an on-time, balanced budget for our city, one that does not raise taxes on New Yorkers and preserves the essential services that we all rely on. And because of our now completed negotiations with the Council on the budget for the next fiscal year, it shores up support for many of the priorities that we share with them. Specifically, working with the Council, we're providing some $58 million to the City Housing Authority. In addition to supporting the core mission of providing public housing, that funding will also help maintain senior centers and other community programs at NYCHA developments. NYCHA, as you know, has experienced a cut in federal funds because of the budget sequestration measures that went into effect all along the nation this spring. It's just shameful that Washington is compounding its failure to come to a reasonable agreement on budget priorities by shrinking its obligation to some of the most vulnerable people in our city, including the many elderly New Yorkers who live in public housing. But we're determined to not to abandon these New Yorkers, just as we've stepped in when the state and federal governments dramatically cut back their support for New York City public schools. We protected our schools, and now we're also protecting NYCHA residents. And we're also allocating funds to the City Department for the Aging and Youth and Community Development so that those agencies can step in and begin to provide services to NYCHA residents. We've also agreed to commit $250 million in city capital funds to projects outlined in our comprehensive plan to create a stronger, more resilient New York that we issued last month. These critical projects will make New York better able to withstand major future coastal storms and all the risks posed by climate change. We've also found common ground with the Council in other areas as well. We have, for example, maintained the strength of the FDNY. There will be no reduction in the number of fire companies in our city. City support for public libraries and cultural institutions will also remain essentially the same as it is in the current fiscal year, and that means that libraries will be able to remain open on average more than 5 days a week, just as they are now. And it means that our cultural sector will have the support that it needs to continue to play a major role in creating jobs and driving economic growth in our city. We're able to achieve these goals without asking taxpayers to stretch their own budgets any further, and we can do that in part because of the recent State Court of Appeals ruling in the city's favor on the borough taxi plan, which will allow us to go ahead with the sale of new taxi medallions. We're also aided by the fact that interest rates have remained lower than we forecast they would be, and that produced over $200 million in savings, including savings realized from refinancing the city's debt. And during the current fiscal year, I'm happy to say city tax revenue has also run somewhat ahead of our forecast, and much of that has come in the form of higher than expected real estate tax collections. However, let me remind you that we're forecasting a budget gap of roughly $2 billion for fiscal year 2015, which will be on us in just 12 months' time. So continued budgetary vigilance is clearly called for, and we will continue to exercise it. We've done all we can to manage the city's finances in the most responsible manner possible, and we will continue to be good financial stewards every remaining day of our tenure here. In that process, I know we'll be able to rely on the partnership and effective leadership of Council Speaker Chris Quinn. So let me turn things now over to Chris. Chris?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Let me thank the Mayor and thank my colleagues. First and foremost, the Chair of our Finance Committee, Councilmember Dominic M. Recchia Jr. Let me thank and just recognize the other council members who are here: Al Van, Leroy Comrie, Rosie Mendez, Margaret Chin, Debbie Rose, Oliver Capel, Danny Drum, Adonis Rodriguez, Mark Weprin, Karen Koslowitz, Dr. Matthew Eugene, Donovan Richards, Karen Koslowitz, I may have said twice, but you can't say the cause enough, Andy King, Debbie Rose, David Greenfield, Ruben Wills, Peter Koo, Jimmy Van Bramer, Jimmy Vaca, Gail Brewer, Maria Arroyo, Darlene Mealy, Jalissa Ferreras, Lou Fiddler, Robert Jackson, Fernando Cabrera, Sarah Gonzalez, Inez Dickens. Did I miss anybody? Leroy Comrie. I said Maria.
Leroy's so thin now.
He really is. He really is. A cutback in the council we should all be very proud of, particularly Leroy. And Maria got introduced twice. Let me also take a moment to echo the Mayor's thanks to Mark Page and the Office of Management and Budget, who have been nothing but outstanding partners with us my entire time as Speaker. So, Mark, thank you and your staff very much. I also want to thank Hayden Mahousis, Deputy Mayor Howard Wolfson, Deputy Mayor Kaz Holloway for their work on the budget. And I want to thank all of the members of the Council's staff for all of their work on 8 budgets with me and 4 with Dominic, led by Preston Niblack and Jeff Rodis and the rest of the entire Council staff. And I want to thank Chuck Marin, Ramon Martinez, and the Council Speaker's Office staff as well. And I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for being a great partner with us over these 8 budgets. A budget is much more than just a financial document. It's a statement of our priorities, and I believe all New Yorkers know this. New Yorkers have to make hard choices to work out their own family's budget every day. New York City government has a responsibility to do the same, and that's exactly what we've done for the last 8 consecutive years. Fortunately, our economy continues to improve, and we now have a better outlook than we had at any time since the financial crash of 2008. But this budget agreement should serve as an example to not just to New Yorkers about what we can get done, but hopefully to all our colleagues in government throughout the country. If you focus on delivering, if you check the grandstanding at the door, you can get a great deal done, and that's what it's all about for New Yorkers, and that's why we're here. So let me go over some of the details of what is in this budget. This year, we again preserve child care seats and after-school programs that so many families depend on. As the Mayor said, we kept all of the fire companies in the city open. We also ensured that all of our libraries, which serve really as neighborhood community centers, remain open and continuing operating at existing levels. I have great hope that we will be able to expand the hours of our libraries in the near future, but at a minimum, we weren't going to allow their operations, thank you, Jimmy, their operating hours to decrease. Swimming pools will be open this week, and they will stay open all summer long. We've also been able to add a few modest service enhancements in programs that urgently needed it, and we want to thank the mayor and his staff for working with us on that. Our immigrant communities will receive enhancement to legal services, our Immigrant Opportunities Initiatives, and CUNY Citizenship Now. Our Department for the Aging, which is so well run by Commissioner Lillian Berry of Paolos, will get an increase in funding to help reduce the waiting list and caseload for homebound seniors, and more funds will be available to help at-risk students at CUNY. Every district in the City Council will receive funding to prevent and combat domestic violence, which has not always been the case. 8 years of all of us working together, we've learned that leadership means working collaboratively to get results for New Yorkers, and that's what's happened here. Not all of us who are here on these steps agree on everything, but what we do agree on is a willingness to negotiate in good faith without bickering and confrontation. It's something that doesn't always happen in government, but something we've always been very proud of over the past 8 years. Other cities in the country are still suffering badly from the effects of the recession. In New York City, this council, working with the mayor and his administration for the last 8 years, have been able to avoid many of these problems. This year's budget would not have been possible without the forward-thinking decisions we made as a city in the boom years. These decisions allowed us to avoid the more painful layoffs and cuts that other large cities have had to endure. We put money aside in the early years of my term as Speaker with the mayor, money that other cities spent all of, leaving them no reserves or trust funds like we had. Obviously, both Hurricane Sandy and federal sequestration pose some fiscal challenges for our city, and in particular for our public housing authority. In an attempt to address these challenges, the council was presented with a plan that would have resulted in cuts that we believe would have adversely affect NYCHA residents. And working with the mayor and his team, we were able to prevent those, to avert 325 layoffs and avoid the closures of nearly 60 senior and community centers. And I hope that sends a message to Washington that when you focus, you can take care of people who need government's help. And while, as the mayor said, the recent court ruling ensures we'll have revenues from the sale of taxi medallions this year, removing any risk and uncertainty, it's important to note that this budget does not rely on one-shots of cash infusion. It's a good indication that we're not leaving the next council and the next administration bad financial footing. We're leaving them a solid financial footing to move forward on. This budget wasn't easy. None are. We were faced with challenges because of what the federal government has failed to do. But again, we've all come together to deliver for New Yorkers, which is why we were all sent to this building. And I just want to thank everyone in the mayor's staff and on the council for always keeping that the primary goal. Thank you.
Chris, let me just add that it is never easy. The city has limited resources and seemingly unlimited demands on its services, and yet we have to come up with something that is fiscally responsible, maintainable, and balanced. And I think Speaker Quinn deserves an enormous amount of credit. She represents lots of different city council people with different views as to what's right, and it's not an easy job to pull all them together and do what is right for the city and make sure that everybody feels that their interests were at least considered, even if they didn't get everything they wanted. And so we all owe you a great debt of gratitude for doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And also, we're going to hear a few minutes, not long talk, an hour and a half, short talk. The City Council Finance Committee Chair, Dominic Recchia, who incidentally has worked as hard as anybody on not just this budget, but representing his district. And I think he really showed his true mettle during Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and working with your staff and your administration, Speaker Quinn and I, we came a long way over the course of this budget process. This year, our city finances were faced with two primary obstacles, one natural, Superstorm Sandy, and one man-made, the federal sequestration. By recognizing our shared challenges, the administration and city officials were committed to working together to make prudent decisions to produce a fair and reasonable budget without raising taxes. Tonight, I can tell you with confidence that we have reached an agreement that is financially sound, but importantly fair and responsible to the people of New York, and especially to all the residents of NYCHA. We heard your cry out for help, and this speaker, Christine Quinn, under her leadership with working all the city council members and the Bloomberg administration and Mayor Michael Bloomberg, together we are adding funds to the budget to address the issue facing NYCHA residents, and we are saving these centers and we're making them better. That's what this is all about. This budget also lays the groundwork for needed investments in the city's future, especially after Superstorm Sandy. And in this budget, there are millions of dollars for capital projects, and especially in those areas hardest hit with Superstorm Sandy, and to address that we are prepared for the future so that we don't never get hit again the way this city was hit. But I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was a great, great proposal that you put forward, and working with you and with your administration, we're going to make things happen in the next 6 months. Thanks for the hard work. I want to thank all my council members, the administration, but especially my finance staff under the leadership of Preston Niblack, Jeffrey Rodas. All right. I also want to thank my attorney, who's always been on my side, Tanisha Edwards. I want to thank Speaker Christine Quinn for her leadership. And Mr. Mayor, you're right, working with 51 of us, it's very difficult. Everyone has different ideas. Okay? And to the public, I want to thank to all those people, to all the advocates who wrote letters, made calls, and waited in line for hours to testify, and who came to the City Council. I want to thank all of the people. We're here to work with the people. We are the voice of the people in New York City. Thank you very much.
Before taking questions, let me just summarize for our Spanish-speaking New Yorkers. Hemos llegado a un acuerdo con el Consejo Municipal para nuestro próximo presupuesto municipal. Mantiene el mismo nivel de servicios esenciales, incluyendo las viviendas públicas, sin subir los impuestos.